Well, I really like it, actually.
Hello.
Hello, Matt.
Hey. Oh,
It's been a while.
Can't believe I'm seeing you on Zoom.
I know, isn't that just remarkable? When was the last one? We did the Pink Floyd one.
Yeah, if you're up for it, we'll do some more because I enjoy doing those. They were cool.
Yeah, I think they're quite good. Maybe we should do a Stephen Wilson one at some point.
Do a Stephen Wilson, yeah. So we're going to talk about the new Stephen Wilson album, The Future Bites. Do you want to talk about how you discovered Porcupine Tree and Stephen Wilson, David? Do you want to start off with that?
Yes, of course. I discovered Porcupine Tree when I was getting back into prog after a bit of a break at the start of the 2000s. And they were just one of those bands that came on my radar. I can't exactly remember where, but everyone was talking about them. Oh, Porcupine Tree, they are the sort of the big new hope for progressive rock. And I think the first album I heard was probably Signify. And it didn't make a huge impression on me at the time. I thought, yeah, it's all right. It's quite nice, but it didn't make a huge impression on me. And then when they released Deadwing, I thought, I'll have another try. And I sort of enjoyed Deadwing a lot more, even though you've got that sort of bit with the crushing riff at the start of it.
Yeah.
And then this weedy voice comes in and you're expecting a sort of a Bruce Dickinson style Iron Maiden vocal.
Yeah.
Oh! But I thought, no, this actually really works. It's really good.
It's cool, yeah.
So I only really got into them at the sort of tail end, I suppose, of their career. I can remember when The Incident was released and everyone was kind of losing their stuff about The Incident, and listening to that and thinking, not quite so sure about this. And it sort of didn't surprise me, actually, when he sort of, threw in the towel for the band and went down the solo route. What about you, Matt? Where did you come in with them?
Okay, so I heard Porcupine Tree with the Voyage 34 single that my friend William Blackie had. And I really, really liked that because it was kind of electronic meets Osricsy, sort of Pink Floydy sort of stuff. Really like that. And then I went to see them 96 because my mate's band Draw was supporting, who became sort of evolved into Orange Clocks, who signed to the Mighty Elephant.
Indeed.
They were supporting Porcupine Tree in Northampton, and they Porcupine Tree were all right. I haven't got vague. It was only very vague, and then I forgot Porcupine Tree existed until about 2008 when I was putting music on MySpace. And probably James Allen discovered me.
It would be James, wouldn't it?
So he discovered me he discovered me and brought me into the prog scene. And I did a sort of recce of what was going on because I'd been into, in the early 2000s, I was listening to sort of Jellyfish and power pop, and then a lot of sort of indie rock, and then I was learning jazz guitar, and I was listening to all those sort of things. So I wasn't really listening to, I forgot Porcupine Tree really existed. I mean, I used to work at HMV and occasionally see an album come in and come out and wouldn't be big sellers. I was into King Crimson, but I wasn't generally into progressive rock. And then James, after having met James and sort of discovering about the progressive rock world, I had Porcupine Tree. And then, it's over the course of the last 10 years, I've probably heard everything they've done. And I really like Signify. I like Signify a lot. I think it's a great record.
Signify, yeah, I must admit, although at the time I didn't particularly like it.
No, it's a funny one, isn't it?
I've gone back to it, and I do like it now. And Stupid Dream is another one I really like.
So yeah, and I like those. And I like the first three albums they did in the 2000s. They're really good. I didn't really get The Incident, but huge admirer of their work and as them as individuals as well. I think they're cool. They've conducted themselves very well, and they've done a lot of interesting stuff. And then followed Stephen Wilson's solo career through the solo stuff. I like the first two solo albums I really liked. The third one I didn't like when it came out because I thought it was sort of pandering to the prog massive a bit. It was a bit sort of prog, let's do a prog album, get the Mellotron out, but actually listening back to it now, it's a really good album. That's really got the lyrically, it's his best album, I think.
The Raven.
The Raven's got lyrically, it's really strong. The band are really good, and I really like it now. I didn't really like it at the time, but I really like it now. And then I've just sort of followed his career. You know, I like and admire most of the stuff he's done. You know, I don't think I like seeing people do well, and because he's worked so hard. He's a really talented guy, and he's doing well, and he's built an audience that love him. And I think it's just brilliant that someone's. I think it's one thing that frustrates me is that I think it's a UK cultural sort of thing where someone starts to do well, and the people say, "Oh, let's give him a good kicking," because
yes,
and it's like, whoa, that's not the. Whereas in America, they celebrate success. In our country, the first thing they do, you know, one of the things you see a lot of sort of bitter progressive rock musicians giving Stephen Wilson a kick, and it's like, well, yeah, you do it then. You get up there and build an audience like that, and you know, I think it's cool that he's getting out there and doing interesting work, and you know, so that brings us up to the present day, doesn't it?
It does. To the future bites,
David. Yeah. So what do you reckon?
Well, I really like it, actually. I heard the singles when they were being released. You know, he dropped a couple of singles before the album was released, sort of towards the tail end of last year. And I thought, yeah, okay, they're all right. Not too sure I'm going to like this one. But then I heard the album, and it really is a case of the whole being greater than the sum of its parts, I think. And in fact, this is something that he says himself, is he likes to make an album as a piece of art. And I think it works better at that. And those songs, you know, King Ghost and Personal Shopper, work much better as part of the album than they do as standalone singles. So I've been listening to it a lot. It's probably, funnily enough, alongside the Transatlantic album, which is a sort of a grand prog behemoth. But those two are the ones that I've been sort of listening to the most, probably over the past month or so. But I think that, you know, the Stephen Wilson one is the one that, if pushed, I would say is my favourite of those two.
I think it sounds quite fresh, doesn't it? And certainly the production. I like the way the production is. It's very the sound. There's not a lot going on sound wise, but the actual sound choices are incredibly strong and really well mixed, and the balance. The sound choices and the sound design is exceptional. It's really, really good.
Yes, it is. He's
very cleverly put the album in an order that certainly shows off the best material. You know, there's a lot of variance in the sound, so it sounds really, really fresh when you listen to the whole album, which is a very clever thing to do as well. You know, that thing of putting an album in the correct order and making sure there's it doesn't all sound the same, and you know, there's a real way each track transitions to another is really, really strong, and I think that's something that perhaps hasn't been on previous albums he's done. I think this one hangs together really well as an album. Especially the transition from Self into King Ghost. I think that works really well.
Yes, that is good.
That goes down to that really quiet part. Oh, that's really cool, that is. And, you know, I love his guitar playing. I think this is his strongest guitar album.
Yeah.
Because he does those funny noises, and there's a lovely melodic playing as well on the lead break of 12 Things, I think it is. There's a lovely sort of Hank Marvin-y sort of lead on there. And I think the guitar playing is exceptionally strong because there isn't tons of it on there. What is there really stands out. So
yes, I was going to say that the guitar playing is great, and part of that is there isn't a huge amount of it. It's mostly electronic instruments, synthesizers, and stuff. But you know, none the worse for that. And yeah, he has yet again managed to do an album which is different from the last one.
Yeah.
And I was listening to the Bob Levchet's podcast. Earlier on today, in fact, interviewing Stephen Wilson. And Wilson was saying that he considers this one to be the first time he's made an album which is entirely him and which doesn't sound like anybody else. Now, I don't know if I would agree with that. I think there are sort of there are influences in there, and that's just going to happen. Yeah, it's inevitable. But it sounds as if he's very comfortable with it. He said it's his favourite of his albums that he's done. Although he also said that he says that about every album when it's released.
But we all say that.
Yeah. Bloody musicians.
I'm sure you say every band is the best thing we've ever released. Every band ever.
Exactly, yeah. Oh, the next one's the best one. The one you haven't heard is the best one.
It's the next one until the next one comes out.
Exactly. But yeah, I think it is, from a stylistic perspective, it's Steven Wilson. You don't listen to it and think, oh, I can obviously hear Pink Floyd in there, or I can obviously hear King Crimson or whatever, or I can hear ABBA in the case of Terminating. But yeah, it is a sort of a style of his own creation, and all fair dues to him for that. I think it's brilliant.
It's a good album. I say it's quite interesting. We're just talking about the way that albums. So there's two types of albums. Albums that sort of are bought by a general audience, and they, the singles stay on Spotify playlists and they sell consistently. And then there's albums that are, well, I used to work for HMV. I used to be a record. I used to run the buying department. So my job was to order albums. And I remember once I ordered, I can't remember if it was Status Quo or Morrissey, one of those two. But week one, we sold
very similar artists.
Yeah, no,
very similar artists. I'm not surprised. I'm not surprised you've conflated them with each other, there, Matt. Yeah.
Whatever you want. But they sell really well week one, and then week two they sell nothing at all because the fan base is there. The fan base comes out and buy it, but there is no additional fan base. Iron Maiden are the same. Week one they do really well. Week two hardly anything. And I think Stephen's very much one of those sort of artists where they sell fantastically well. People buy the box set, they buy the vinyl, they buy everything, right? Those super fans. But after that, there's no sort of real. There's not many casual Steven Wilson fans. Either people love him or they don't even know who he is.
Yeah.
So a lot of my mates, when I talk to them about the world I sort of inhabit with Progland, they've never heard of Steven Wilson, and they certainly would never have heard of like Hakens or those sort of bands. They're fantastic bands, but they don't link into the mainstream at all. So
no.
But I'm really glad he's got all those reviews. The reviews have been really strong, and I think it probably has gained him a few more fans. And the interesting thing is some of his fans really, really hate it. And because they're really vocal about it, in fact, because of the way social media works, that helps promote it more.
Exactly.
It's the best thing they could do for him.
Those are the ones you tend to hear are the ones who are basically objecting to it. And actually, to be right, it's happened, I think, with every album he's done. Certainly since The Raven, because The Raven was like prog album with a capital P, and then after that, it's sort of Hand Cannot Erase was also pretty prog. Let's be honest.
Yeah, I like that. I like that. I wasn't massive on To the Bone, but I'm not saying it's not any good. It just didn't connect with me particularly. Like I say, I saw him on that tour actually, and he was brilliant, absolutely fantastic.
Hand Cannot Erase.
Yeah, it's brilliant.
Yeah, that's when I saw him. I never saw Porcupine Tree, but I saw him live on that Hand Cannot Erase tour at the Hammersmith.
I saw him a couple of times, and both brilliant. Really good show, incredible band.
Yeah,
I went to see him once at where was it? The Forum, and I think Dave Gilmour was there that night. And which is that's quite an endorsement, isn't it?
It is.
There's not many people, not many sort of artists from the progland who get something like that. So, I just like to see people doing well and who work so hard to build up an audience. I think it's a good album. Really enjoyed it. And I just wonder why, some people are so angry about it. Do you understand it? Or?
No, I don't really, because if I don't like something, I won't listen to it.
Exactly. And it's not like the days where there's only 3 radio channels and 3 television programs, 3 television channels. It's not like we have to listen to it.
No, it's not.
Infinite choice.
There's loads of things, and you can sample them beforehand. I mean, in this case, I bought a copy of The Future Bites on CD because I actually wanted to have a copy in my collection. But I was able to listen to it beforehand on streaming media on the evil Spotify. But that meant, yeah, I could listen to it, and in some ways, that's the sort of the best way to use Spotify if you want to support music. You listen to it, and then if you really like it, you'll buy a copy.
Yeah,
that's what I hope people do with Elephant stuff. But
that's always good. What about the Elton John cameo as well from your man Elton?
Well, unless I'd known beforehand that it was him, I probably wouldn't have recognised him. To be honest.
Fascinating thing about Elton John, though, I mean, I haven't been around the music scene like myself for 25, 30 years. He's one of these guys, he pops up all the time.
Yes.
So when I first moved to London, the bands that we were hanging around with were like The Darkness, we watched The Darkness, then we were sort of hanging around a lot of seeing Libertines a lot. And Elton John, he turned up with the Libertines. He did a guest spot with not when I saw him, but at some festival or something. And he's one of these guys, he sort of pops up with whoever's sort of contemporary at the time. He's very good at sort of keeping himself in, he doesn't need to do it because he's Elton John. He's Elton John, he's properly brilliant. But he's always sort of connects to artists all the time. He's a interesting guy. So I think that's a nice endorsement. And
he cropped up on that film Kingsman 2.
Did he?
Yeah, he did.
Yeah.
As himself.
Yeah.
And it was just a really sort of silly kind of cameo role, really. But I ran into Elton John once, almost literally.
Did you?
Yeah, this was years ago. He was on the Tube. Remember the television program on Channel 4 with Jules Holland, Paulie Yates. And I was at Newcastle Airport. My dad worked abroad, and I must have been about 14, I guess. And we'd gone to Newcastle Airport to meet him. He was coming home for his leave.
Right.
He wasn't in the services. He worked for a company in Saudi Arabia, maintaining radar. And he was coming home for his leave, and Elton John and his entourage were sort of getting off the aeroplane from London in front of him to get in their sort of limo to head down to the Tube. And yeah, like a bloody idiot, of course, I didn't recognise him until he sort of more or less walked past. And my mum's going, "It's Elton John, it's Elton John." Oh yeah,
John.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, no, it's a weird one, isn't it? That he sort of pops up with them, but so yeah. In conclusion, then, good album.
Yes, I like it, and I don't get why people sort of hate on it so much, to use the internet kids speak that they say.
I think there's a lot of people get a bit bitter.
Do you have a favorite? Do you have a favorite song from the album, Matt?
Right. Okay. So probably King Ghost I like, but I think there's that 12 Things. Was it 12 Things? I can't remember what it's called.
12 Things I Forgot.
12 Things. There you go. 12 Things I Forgot. I forgot it. That's the sort of thing that would do massive business. I reckon if they could get that onto the Radio 2 playlist, they do really well.
Oh yes, and it's 12 Things. I think is probably the most recognisable Stephen Wilson song on there. It sounds like a lot of the other stuff that he's done before. And I'm not saying that in a derogatory fashion. I just think
the last 3 Stephen Wilson albums remind me a bit of late period Manic Street Preachers as well. That sort of it's kind of Radio 2-y, rocky sort of crossover, but smart as well. You know what I mean? It's like
it's interesting. I was listening to the album with Yvette earlier on, and Personal Shopper. She'd heard it a few times before, and she's been saying phrases. I'm trying to think of who that reminds me of, and then she says, Scissor Sisters. Yeah, and actually, it is.
Scissor Sisters, the other one I thought of for it as well, because those background vocals are well Scissor Sisters, aren't they?
Oh god, yeah, and the way that the sort of the beat and the sort of the up tempo bits works.
I will say, actually, I do like those female backing vocals that they use throughout the album as well.
Yes.
That's really cool.
It's beautifully arranged. The whole thing is really well done. I think my favourite is probably actually Count of Unease. I just think that's a really sort of haunting, interesting melody. I heard someone say, I can't even remember who it was, that they thought that it sounded a bit like Frost, that track.
Interesting. I mean, I saw an interview with him. I watched a couple of interviews when the album came out, and he said, I can't remember which he said. He said he'd not heard of Frost, although he covers one of John Mitchell's from Lonely Robots songs on one of the B-sides, doesn't he? But I know him and John are mates. But yeah, I mean, it sounds like that kind of. It's a very similar sort of thing to sort of what Jem and John do as well. It's that contemporary via the 80s take on prog.
I think it's much the sound design of it as anything.
It's people are smart and people are good at what they do, and let's say Simon Godfrey as well. Those sort of people who take the progressive thing, and then they definitely a mixture, a bit of like Boards of Canada and contemporary electronica. Well, contemporary Boards of Canada's 20 years old now, but slightly more modern electronica stuff. And then the minimalism production values contemporary pop music as well. So there's one of the great things about pop music at the moment is there's so many, in terms of production, there's lots of things you can nick because harmonically there's not a lot going on most of it, but in terms of production, we're living in the golden age. The production's incredible, but the chord change, there'll be 4 chords going round and round, but the production on it'd be brilliant. You know what I mean?
That was something that Stephen Wilson was saying in this interview that I was listening to earlier. Is that we've got to the point now. In fact, this is something I was talking to Kev Feasy about the other day. Is that you've got to the stage now where the digital world can give you everything you need to make great music. From a technical perspective, obviously, you need to be a good songwriter in order to write good songs. But and this is something Stephen Wilson was saying. He recently moved house, within the last couple of years when he got married, and for the first time he has a dedicated studio space. He said before that everything he was doing, including all those remixes he did for the the Crimson Yes and Jethro Tull albums and so forth, was all done in just whichever room he happened to have his stuff in. And now he's got a proper studio, but he's saying he does everything in the digital domain. From that point of view, it's absolutely the golden age. Is that if you've got the ears for it, and if you've got the talent
and the time to experiment
and the time to do it, then you can produce brilliant stuff for not very much money. Actually,
no, it's definitely it's a funny time but the stuff that I think Stephen Wilson gets really well out of is those big box sets that Bird and Shed do. I mean, they're really. I can't remember the amount of options you could get for this future buys, but there was box sets.
Quite a few, wasn't there?
Yeah, it was loads. And I would imagine a lot of the fans have bought all of the box sets and CD versions, and I think it was a tape, and I think there was and all these sort of things as well that that the hardcore fans collect.
I've heard some of the sort of the extended material, so I've heard the instrumental versions, and they're just the songs. Without vocals, and then there's a sort of a
extra track,
another CD of different mixes and sort of demos and stuff like that. I don't really think it adds very much to it, but
he's a funny one though because
that's not the point, is
because his demos sound so good. I can't really see the point of getting his demos.
No.
They're not like some bloke with like the Beatles demos where it's on the anthology where they range from sort of rough cuts to George bumbling into a acoustic guitar. You're not going to get that because he's someone who's primarily a craftsman and he makes records that sound amazing.
Yeah,
and even his demos are going to sound better than anything I could ever do. You know what I mean? At the best of me time. So
he's I mean that's his job, isn't it? Bob Lefset asked him sort of what he felt his job was. Is he a musician? Is he is he a remixer? What does he do? And he said that he considers his job as making records, and that was why he got into all this, to make records, not to be a great guitar player or a great singer, and not to do the remixing, which sort of happened more or less by accident. It was to make records. And
I think I mean that's I can relate to that. That's the bit I like as well. So no, it's good, and so it's nice to see him gaining some sort of some sort of crossover into the mainstream via the press he's got. And I hope he does pick up a few extra fans, because one of the things these sort of moaning prog musicians talking about Stephen Wilson, this and that, they don't realise that he funnels people into the music scene. The more people discover Stephen Wilson, it gradually sort of goes into the rest of us as well.
That's absolutely right. I mean, there are bands who I don't like particularly, but I think I'm glad they exist because, you know, they sort of cross-fertilize with other music that I do like and maybe get it a bit more success.
No, it's good. Right, are we done?
I think we probably are. We must think of another one to do where we can sort of, you know, compare and contrast and slag people off.
We could go back to the Porcupine Tree and Stephen Wilson catalogue and we'll talk about that perhaps.
That'd be quite fun. So if anyone's watching this and you'd like to see that, you'd like to see two
confused men,
middle-aged blokes,
confused, forgetting which album's which. Oh, it's nothing like it.
Yeah, talking about their favourite Stephen Wilson / Porcupine Tree albums, then leave a comment.
All right, thanks, David. All done.
Cheers, Matt. Thank you.
Lovely. Thanks, mate.